Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I am your host, Tom Grossi, and after a depressing loss against the Washington Redskins, which makes me question my life decisions and alcohol choices, we're moving on to week 4 against the Buffalo Bills, a game that, if you asked me a week ago, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a piece of cake, not a problem. And then the Bills kicked the Vikings' ass, and while the Packers' loss was very devastating, that was the one thing that really got me through Sunday, just watching Josh Allen hurdle over Anthony Barr and into my wet dreams. And so, with that being said, we have a diehard Buffalo Bills fan with us today, a good friend of the show, and personally, Jimmy, thank you so much for being on, bud.
Absolutely, Tom. Like you said, about a week ago, I thought we were going to have a completely different conversation today.
Yeah, you actually, you texted me while the game was going on Sunday, and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, this is going to be different. This might be a very, very different conversation because, I mean, just getting right into it, the first 2 weeks, it was bad. It was really bad to be a Buffalo Bills fan.
It was pretty dire out here, to be honest. Pretty much everything was doom and gloom, and people were talking about coming off and draft picks next year and trades for the offseason and basically looking forward to a whole different season. But now, last game kind of gave everybody a little bit of life.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I was looking up some stats that, you guys, I think covered, were, one of the biggest underdogs in betting history. I want to say you were, third or something like that against the Vikings this week. And
yeah,
the fact that you guys just, it wasn't a close game. You just dominated them on every facet of the game. And Josh Allen coming in looking like a stud. I mean, that
more
definitely,
like a god.
Yeah, you know what? I excuse me. He did hurdle over Anthony Barr, a god. Yes, I would agree with that. And I mean, the turnaround in Buffalo just must be insane right now.
Yeah, it's like I said, pretty much right now everyone is kind of going nuts over this game, whether it's specifically Josh Allen or the defense or the coaching or whatever. But people are going nuts about it. But yeah, it's pretty nuts. Like I said, just going from being absolutely miserably terrible to all of a sudden actually looking like an actual team.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys, the way that I classify the Buffalo Bills, so I went to Buffalo years ago. This is 12 years ago, and saw them take on the Packers with good old Brett Favre, and you guys destroyed us back then. And you look back at the past, within 5 years, there was a point where you had one, if not one of the best defenses in the league, and you were shutting down guys like Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning and Tom Brady from week to week to week. And now when you look at the Buffalo Bills, that their defense doesn't scream to me, world beaters. It's kind of just toppled off a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about, last game we had somebody retire at halftime. So on our defense, that kind of goes to show you exactly how great they thought they were. So,
I mean, how bad is it? I thought honestly that was an Onion article. That had to have been a joke. But for you to be no, I'm not gonna sit this one out, or I'm gonna hobble around and pretend I'm injured. I'm literally going to quit my profession because that's how bad it is in the middle of a game.
Yeah, like I said, I think it got covered pretty much in all facets of the media. I mean, not even football shows were talking about it. But yeah, but it also seemed to be almost like a catalyst. It seemed like this week for them. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly what it was, but I mean, the defense actually came out and actually played a great game.
Yeah.
And whether that's because Vontae Davis left, I mean, I'm not in the locker room, so I don't know. But I mean, I definitely think it probably was a good pushing point for them to kind of, unify with that and kind of move forward and use that as motivation. And I think that might have been a big, big role in that game.
Yeah, and I mean, you take a look for the past couple years. Obviously, you had some big names on the defense, right? You had Mario Williams on there for a while, which kind of
Right.
didn't end as well as everyone would have wanted it to. So like what do you see? Is it just a loss of personnel? Is it coaching changes? What happened to that dominant defense, and how come I would argue for the past like couple seasons it hasn't been in the spotlight of being like one of those top 5, top 10 defenses?
Yeah, I think really one of the biggest changes was Rex Ryan. Whether you
Yeah.
like the move that he was the coach or not, but basically they had Jim Schwartz for a couple years before Rex Ryan, and Jim Schwartz just kind of let them do whatever they kind of felt like they needed, whether it was just Russian quarterback and just kind of let them play free and loose.
Mm-hmm.
And then Schwartz kind of understood his players' capabilities and actually played into their strengths. Whereas I feel like Rex Ryan kind of came in and he had his set scheme that he used with the Jets, and he thought that that was the best way to do it. And he tried to force all the pieces into his scheme, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of hurt them for 2 years. And then because of that, and you saw that their defense kind of, stuttered with that, then they started, letting go some of the bigger pieces and things like that for money reasons and thinking that they weren't going to fit in. And because of that, we lost a lot of, bigger pieces, like you said. Mario Williams was, decent while I was here, but like Marcel Darius, I think was a very, big loss for that defense. He's a big run stuffer up the middle. But things like that. And then I think this year too, I think a lot of things, our secondary is hurt all the time. We were just picking people off the Patriots practice squad for this week. So,
Yeah.
I think injuries and like you said, a lot of loss of big name players over the last couple of years. And then Mason, I really think what it was the last 2 years, we went from having that, elite defense, and then with Rex Ryan basically, just trying to force, square pieces in a round hole in a sense.
Yeah, I get you. Rex Ryan, not everybody's cup of tea.
No, absolutely not. It's a splashy move, but that's kind of what the Bills, I think, they're trying to get away from. They try to make a lot of splashy moves to try to, invigorate the fan base and things like that. You can go all the way back to when they signed T.O.,
Yep.
things like that. But I think with McDermott and, new management, things like that, they're definitely trying to change the culture to something a little different, trying to stick away from those big name personalities.
Yeah, and the Bills obviously seem to be kind of getting back on that horse of, drafting well. Obviously, going for Josh Allen this year. And, the thought that I had going into it, because obviously you don't have Tyrod Taylor anymore. You had Peterman, who played last season, and it was like a train wreck. And it was so, was that the six? He threw 6, right? Was it 6 interceptions?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That wasn't a mocking thing. I actually wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And then like when I heard that like he was going to be the starter, I'm just like, why? Because again, it's one of those things that I go back and forth with about, QBs right out of the draft. In that, do you give them like the Aaron Rodgers treatment in that they sit behind somebody? But
Right.
then again, are you then admitting to your fan base that like, hey, this is kind of a rebuilding year, we're allowing them to learn. But when it comes to your specific case of Peterman or throw Josh Allen into the fire, you might want to throw Josh Allen into the fire there.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what they did. They tried to start Peterman. Peterman through the preseason looked, the best out of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
And, so he won the starting spot. But, after that disastrous, first half that he had in that first game, of course you're going to try to change something up. And why not throw Josh Allen? That's one of the kind of, the downsides is you don't want to potentially stunt Josh Allen's development as far as throwing him in there for physically getting hurt, but also mentally distraught. Like if you throw a rookie in there and he gets hit, throws some interceptions, that you may not come back from that mentally either.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, like you're right, you're kind of in that situation. Either you start Peterman and you kind of keep going with it, and you're just going to admit that it's a losing season and kind of go for draft picks and things like that.
Yeah.
Or you throw Josh Allen there and give the fan base something to be excited about. So.
Yeah.
But Josh Allen is playing well. So, it's a win-win right now.
It paid off. That is like the ultimate test to go against a Vikings defense, which is like number 1 and number 2 in almost every category last year.
Absolutely,
and looked like they were on their way, at least having a semi-dominant defense again this year. You got to be pretty happy with the guy's first performance. And this year, looking at the draft, you obviously have guys like Darnold and Allen and Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield. And by week 4, all those guys are going to be starting. And I think that also speaks to what we were just talking about, is that we are in a league that the fans are so like, we need to win now, like right now. I mean, you look at the Browns game, for example, and Tyrod Taylor, even before he got hurt, was getting booed. They were chanting for Baker Mayfield. And obviously the Browns are just a car wreck of depression, for the past 2 years. I wouldn't equate them to the Bills, but
well, we're right there.
you're close. But again,
Yeah.
it's still it's still the Browns. But
Right.
that being said, I feel like now that you have that win under your belt, or at least Josh Allen has that win under his belt, kind of the ceiling is super high for him. But I think also the leeway that's going to be given to him, considering that was his first performance, I would think that the fans are going to be like, all right, you know what? He's going to make some mistakes. That's fine. But obviously, hopefully we got somebody good on our team.
Yeah. I think another thing you got to kind of worry about now, too, is, I mean, obviously the game that they just had against the Vikings was great, and they actually showed, actual life, and Josh Allen played well. The defense played well. But now you also have to worry about almost too much hype. You almost have to kind of come back to reality a bit, because he is still a rookie quarterback, and right now everyone is pretty all hyped. I'm hyped up about it. Like, I'm excited. I think I rewatched him hurdling Barr like 5 times, like so in like 5 seconds. It was great. But yeah, so now you got to kind of come back to reality and realize, hey, he's going to make mistakes, and he's still a rookie, and things are going to not great things are going to happen. So
sure.
You got to be patient with it. You also, kind of like you said, if he has a bad game, you can't all of a sudden just be like, hey, we need somebody new or anything. You still have to let him develop still.
Yeah.
But
so that being said, because you had a busy off season, the Tyrod Taylor saga or era ended in Buffalo. Kind of what were your thoughts on that? Because I really couldn't find like a pulse on like who Tyrod Taylor was to that fan base. Was he someone that where you're like, yay, rah, rah, because he did take you to the playoffs? Or was it kind of like, all right, we need to move on with our lives and kind of move forward?
So it seems like it's very split. Like either you hated him and you just wanted to get rid of him, or you appreciated for what he did. And I fall more into that category where, Tyrod was what we had. He was our option, and he wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't great. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where, you kind of are okay with it, but do you want to be stuck in like that mediocre, kind of playing football all the time? So
yeah,
it's one of those things where like I appreciated the fact that he got us to the playoffs and he actually played well. He was a game manager. I know a lot of people use that term for those types of quarterbacks, but he did make some exciting plays with his legs. But to be honest, if you're trying to rebuild a program like the Bills are, you're going to want somebody that can actually step up and become that franchise quarterback and somebody that the fans can really, really get behind. So, I mean, I was sad to see him go just because I thought he was good for Buffalo, good for the city and everything like that. But I was also excited to kind of move on and potentially move into the next era of, Buffalo Bills football.
Yeah.
And I think that's where most fans are.
Yeah. And I think you look at today's NFL, right? You need at least, like you said, a game manager or a competent quarterback. And if that's all you have, you better have a hell of a defense like backing you up, right? Because you have like your Nick Foles or you had like your Case Keenum from last year, and that can only get you so far. And usually the quarterbacks are gonna help you win those games that, like in the playoffs or like those clutch games.
Right.
You need that. And like that's why for like Alex Smith, even though he just wiped the floor with the Packers, it's one of those things that last year he was very, very good, but Alex Smith is not really gonna win you a game. He might not lose you one, but he wasn't like one of those guys like you were saying. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, you wish Tyrod the best. I saw him on Hard Knocks this year, and you're like, yay, Browns. But now I feel like even they have moved on for him, and that like Tyrod's gonna be sitting now forever because the Baker Mayfield mania has begun.
No, I mean, as of today, there's rumors about trading him and stuff like that, but who knows if the Browns actually will let him go. But I mean, wherever he ends up landing, I mean, he'll probably end up being a starter again somewhere, either by the end of this season or next season. Like I said, he's that kind of quarterback. He's shown that he's capable of starting, so some team's going to pick him up at some point.
Now, when you guys drafted Josh Allen this year, was that something that you were excited about? Not just the prospect of a new quarterback, but did you like know anything about Josh Allen, like where he came from, considering that it was pretty obvious that there was going to be a plethora of quarterbacks falling within the first round?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, like you said, there was a lot of quarterback prospects, and it was a very quarterback-heavy draft. I mean, I'm not a huge follower of college football, so a lot of these guys I wasn't really following up until the draft, and then once the draft happens, like the months leading into it, you kind of find out everything you need to know about these guys, including everything that they tweeted in the past and everything. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, going in, I know a lot of Bills fans. I mean, a lot of people weren't high on Josh Allen just because it was almost too much of a project compared to everyone else, and everyone else, all these other guys were NFL ready, and Josh Allen was going to have to be a project.
Yeah.
So I think when the Bills had a chance to, get Rosen and some of the other guys, and then the fact that they chose Allen, so people were shocked. Even Bills fans, I know a lot of analysts and things like that were shocked too. But the more that through preseason and like the mini camps and things like that, and how he's kind of assimilated himself into Buffalo culture, I think more and more people now have realized that he was actually the best choice for Buffalo, not only as a player, but actually for like the city and the fans and things like that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because like, yeah, I've even heard that from like the commentators and the announcers, like calling him like literally, like what you said, like he has that label of project next to him. And meanwhile, Darnold really impressed the first game, doing really well against the Lions. And now he started to drop off. Rosen, will see him for the first time this week. I believe he's starting for the Cardinals. And then Baker Mayfield just won his first game as well. So obviously there's a lot of hype behind him as well. But that being said, I mean, if you're Josh Allen, you kind of also have to have that chip on your shoulder, right? Of just being like, okay, all right, you're going to call me a project? Well, I'm about to hurdle some people's.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you saw it in that game last week. He was fired up all throughout the game. Like, he was getting all, like, the defense rallied up, his offense, and, like, even on the field. I mean, like, one of the first drives, he's Superman diving to the end zone. He's hurdling people and, like, basically plays that you normally wouldn't see a quarterback do. And I think it was because he, like you said, he has that chip on his shoulder that, he's not ready to start yet and he's not ready yet. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely there, and I think it definitely shows, but I think it's going to just fuel him even more. And it seems like that's what he's been feeding off of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Bills fan, you got to be as hopeful as you have been in quite some time. Now, I'm going to get to the how you became a Bills fan, because we're very similar in age. So,
Yes.
I mean, the Bills have a history. It's a very sad history, especially
Very long history, yeah.
especially when it comes to Super Bowls.
Yep.
So was that? And please correct me if I'm wrong. I may not be as up to date as I would like to of my Bills history. Is it 4 Super Bowls?
Not only is it 4, but it's 4 in a row.
In a row, right? Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I thought it. I thought it was. So like, kind of tying that into your whole story. How did you even find this team and be like, you know what, the team that lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, that's my team? Like, because I've never heard something as brutal as that. You could lose last-second Super Bowls, by being on the 1-yard line or what have you, or have, blow it like the Falcons. But for you to go 4 years in a row to get the expectations like, oh, yes, we're going to do it 4 times.
Yep.
That's horrifying.
Try living it sometimes. That's
Yeah.
But so I became a Bills fan. I mean, mostly from proximity.
Yeah.
But also like everyone in my family was Bills fans, so that kind of just rubbed off. But I think the main reason was kind of just exactly what you said. I mean, so the first Super Bowl was when I was 4.
Yeah.
And then by the last one, I was 7. So I was kind of in that prime age of, my dad would watch the Bills play. And so I was always watching with my dad. So I became a Bills fan through that. So, but what was great about it was at that age, I thought this was amazing. I thought the Bills were always going to be good.
Yeah.
Like forever. I was living in the golden age of Buffalo Bills football. So I was like, oh, this is great. I like the best team in the NFL, and this is going to be great going forward. This is going to be an annual expectation. So yeah, so I mean, the first couple ones I was a little too young to remember. I definitely remember the ones against the Cowboys, And just I remember the absolute feeling of defeat, against that. But then, like I said, I mean, at that time, I thought, okay, well, they just lost another one, so next year we'll go again.
Yeah.
But then it didn't happen for 19 years. So,
you learned disappointment at a very, very young age. You were just like, well,
absolutely.
this is a life lesson.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you expected it as long as I was a child. I was like, oh, this is great. And then, yeah. So 19 years, and then not only that, but then the playoff game that they had in 1999 was they lost to the Music City Miracle, which is also heartbreaking.
Oh God, you know what? It's funny you say that because everyone knows about the Music City Miracle. I actually forgot that it was against the Bills.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy's like, I have not forgotten that.
No Bills fan has forgotten that. I mean, it's not as famous as Wide Right, but it's right up there in sports. Legendary wins in the playoffs or losses in our case on our side, but it's heartbreaking sometimes.
I'm sorry. Like that comes from a real place. Like that's brutal. So like when it comes to fan bases, I feel like you guys like you deserve one. Like let's go. Like let's give you one. You know what I mean? Like just to kind of to quell the crowd a little bit and move on, just so we can finally get that and just get it out of our system.
You saw that across the NFL a little bit last year when the Bills finally made the playoff. Most teams, except for the Ravens, like the fans, most of the fans were actually kind of rallying behind Buffalo. It was kind of cool to see. Everybody kind of saw Buffalo as the underdog and, finally breaking the streak and things like that. So, I think there's a little bit of a Buffalo Bills fan in everybody because it's kind of hard not to, after everything they've been through.
It makes sense. Everybody loves an underdog. And looking at the current NFC East, obviously your favorite team besides the Bills has to be the Patriots in your admiration and love for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
First of all, fuck the Patriots. And it's one of those things, getting beaten up on the Patriots twice a year. And ever since Brady and Belichick kind of came on the scene, that's obviously been their division. So you have to respect them for that at least.
Yeah.
But being on the receiving end of it and kind of, seeing it year after year and not having it yourself, it kind of makes you a little jealous. But yeah.
Yeah, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because I would argue now the NFC East is, the AFC East is as competitive as it has been in some time. The Dolphins right now are number one in the division, and the Patriots, while they started off looking real good, they just dropped some games to the Jaguars, who are arguably a good team, and they just dropped one to the Lions. So you got to think that Tom Brady at some point is going to be like, oh, I'm 55 years old. I should probably stop playing football. And then you're just like, yes, this is our time. Because the Jets, while they have Darnold, they're absolutely rebuilding. The Dolphins, I don't believe in that team either. I don't care if they're number one in the division with Tannehill. So you got to think your window is definitely opening for the Bills, especially if Josh Allen is the guy that you think he is.
Like you said, you kind of hit the nail on that. There's definitely everybody, not just our division, but everyone in the NFL is kind of curious what it's going to look like post Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And I think this division specifically is going to kind of be turned upside down, whether you said it's the Jets, Miami, the Bills. I think they're all kind of chomping at the bit to kind of be that next team. And throughout the last couple of years, one team will step up, whether it's been like last year, the Bills made the playoffs or the Dolphins made the playoffs a couple of years ago. So it's one of those things where, like you said, yeah, there's a lot of hope.
Yeah.
But until the fact that Brady or Belichick actually leave, it's going to be the Patriots division. And we've been saying for the last 4 or 5 years, well, maybe this is the year Brady retires. But the dude is a robot. Like you said, he's going to probably not retire until he's 55, 60 years old. So who knows? And especially, as just since I've followed the Packers a little bit here, the way the quarterback rulings and hitting, Brady could play until 60 because he won't have to get hit at all. So
yeah, well, obviously when they implement the flag football rules next week, it's really going to change the game. and they
Right.
have to play freaking patty cake with them. Yeah, no, I completely agree. But the AFC as a whole, I mean, because right now, just coming from an NFC perspective, I would argue it has never been more competitive. Obviously, the NFC West is the 49ers were hopefully there to contend, but the Rams kind of have that locked down. But you have 3 teams in the NFC South, with the Bucks looking really good, potentially 4 teams in the NFC South that look like they are at least contenders for the playoffs. I don't know what's going on with the NFC East, if that's something. And then the NFC North, you have 3 contenders as well. So we are stacked to the brim with competition. I feel like at least in the AFC, there is a lot more opportunity for those teams to step up and be like, okay, we can be a wild card team and let's take it from there. Maybe we can go deep into the playoffs. We just have to get into the dance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of shows the last couple of years. I mean, the Patriots being like one of the only surefire teams that usually get in the playoffs. The Steelers were there a couple of years ago. They're kind of fallen off a little bit too. But you're absolutely right. And that showed last year specifically. There were so many teams in the last 2 games that were in playoff contention still. And these are teams that were 9-5 and whatnot going into the last couple of games of the season.
Yeah.
And I guess it's good. I mean, I don't know. It's good because there is competition and it makes it exciting. But then also, I can't always tell if it's just mediocre football being played or if all these teams are actually really good and they're just kind of beating up on each other kind of thing. But yeah, no, it definitely makes it exciting, and it definitely makes it for hopeful teams to actually kind of have hope that their team will actually make the playoffs, and there's not a huge disparity between the really top teams and the really low teams. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, and any one of those AFC teams could be the next New York Giants. And what I mean by that, you get hot at the right time and you just get in, and then you could look at a Super Bowl. You just have to win a few games after that. So it's definitely possible, but I'm hopeful for you, and I hope that the Bills find success. Just not this week. They can find it in every other week, just not this coming one. Because again, I wasn't afraid of this game, but now I'm mildly concerned. You have an Aaron Rodgers who's not mobile. His knee looked like it was bothering the hell out of him on Sunday. Our defense could not catch a cold. It was terrible. Our secondary, Bryce is literally not only allowing passes to be completed downfield, he's also literally breaking his own teammate's ankle by falling on it. So the Packers right now, we're the same record as the Browns. So the Packers Nation right now is a little concerned, and we're hoping to get back on track against the Bills. But I'm curious to what you think looking ahead at Sunday's game. What do you see kind of being the big matchups, and how do you see this game playing out?
I think it'll be a pretty closely contested game. I think really what it's going to come down to is I think what the Vikings' big mistake was. I think they, the announcers all throughout the game were calling it a trap game, and I think that's exactly what it was. I think the Vikings kind of went into it not mentally prepared, and they just kind of thought they were going to steamroll over the Bills.
Yeah.
So I think for the Packers, I think the key for them would have to be not to just think this as a joke, actually take it seriously and go in mentally prepared and actually want to play the game.
Yeah.
I think if they do that, I think the Bills might have a hard time kind of bouncing back from last week. And I think they're on the other side where they're really hyped up. And sometimes after a really hyped up game, there can be a little bit of a deflation after that. But I think for the most part, I think it's going to be a close game. Hoping the Bills pull it out. I'm hoping Josh Allen has another phenomenal game. And I think, again, like you said, what the key of the game is going to be, I think it's going to be how Josh Allen plays again. If he comes out with that same intensity and that same kind of, the way he protected the football, things like that, I think that Bills actually have a really good chance. And if their defense plays as well as they did last game, I think that they'll actually give the Packers a little bit of trouble, especially with Aaron Rodgers kind of not being at fully 100%, things like that. So, but the bad thing is we're, as of today, LaShawn McCoy, who's a huge part of our offense, is still day-to-day. Hopefully he comes back to help kind of make our offense a little bit more diverse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Packers historically have always struggled against mobile quarterbacks. You can talk about Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, basically anybody who could run a decent 40-yard dash. It's a problem for the Green Bay Packers. And at least you can count on having at least one roughing the passer penalty in that game. So that's a free 15 yards for you, my friend. So from Clay
Absolutely.
Matthews, you're welcome already, because I see it just him on the other side of the line, looking menacingly at Josh Allen and then throwing a flag for intimidation and roughing the passer. So, that's how I see that going.
Yeah. He'll have a lot of opportunities. Our offensive line is terrible. That's our one big weakness that we have. So
Yeah.
there's going to be plenty of opportunities to get to Josh Allen. And like you said, that's going to be their big struggle, I think, this week against the Packers defense. But yeah, I mean, if they're going to flag him for hitting him, then yeah, just let him through.
Just walking right, like at this point, literally, he could just make him dinner on the field, and he would get called for an undercooked steak. So I don't know what you do at this point. But like you said too, like we also have some issues on offensive line. Like Brian Bulaga hurt his back, and Spriggs wasn't really looking too good. So we got some depth issues. But it's going to take a healthy Aaron Rodgers and everybody on deck, and that defense really needs to shore up because Adrian Peterson ran all over us last week. And McCoy has the potential to do the same if he plays. So
if he plays, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a much closer game than anybody anticipated, a week ago. But that being said, obviously a lot of this is going to ride on Josh Allen, and it's hard to judge it based off one game. But can you kind of give me your season predictions to start the season, and if they've shifted, what are the new ones? Or have you kind of just stuck with like, listen, I'm going with low expectations, hope to be pleasantly surprised?
So at the beginning of the season, I was kind of predicting them to be their mediocre selves. The Bills have a history of going, 8-8 or 9-7, things like that. So I was kind of predicting them to be right around there. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs again, but I think that they were going to be, mediocre. Then after the first couple games, I kind of thought they were going to be a little worse than I thought.
Yeah. And
I was thinking maybe they win 4-3 games, somewhere around there, and hoping for a good draft pick. But after this game, it shows that they have life. So I'm kind of putting them back, maybe not so much right at around 500, but, maybe 5-11 or so. I mean, they still have a lot of work to go, and their schedule is one of the worst this year in the NFL, and they have a very tough schedule ahead of them. So it's going to be an interesting, hard, difficult season, but I think there's going to be a lot of positives that you're going to see out of this and a lot to look forward to. So
yeah, and I mean, listen, if Josh Allen, like we've been talking about, is the guy, is the franchise guy, no matter what the record is at the end of the season, if you got locked in a franchise quarterback, then you just build all the pieces around him. You got McCoy locked in as running back as long as no weird controversies happen off the field.
Right.
And then it's kind of, like you said, you shore up that offensive line in the draft, you build up that defense again, and at least you don't have to worry about the quarterback position, which every team is always looking for their next franchise quarterback.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as McDermott, ever since he took over, there's been a new motto in Buffalo, and it's been trust the process. That's what he says all the time, and that's kind of where we're at right now as a franchise, is just keep trusting the process, and eventually, we'll finally get that first Super Bowl win.
There you go. And like I said, I hope it comes sooner rather than later. I look forward to the Browns-Bills AFC Championship game.
No longer the toilet bowl.
Yes, and that'll be it. But Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and I wish you the best of luck this season and in future seasons. Just if you could just let off the gas a little bit this week, just that'd be swell.
I hope not. But no, thank you, Tom, for having me on. It's been a pleasure for sure.
Absolutely, buddy. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TomGrossi Comedy, or Tom Grossi Comedy on Twitter, Patreon, and the Instagram. If you want to pick up a copy of my debut album, you pick up a physical copy at TomGrossiComedy.com, or pick one up on Amazon or iTunes. The links will be in the description down below. But let me know what you think about this coming Sunday. It should be a good game. One that I hope the Packers win, because it's very possible for us to win the remaining of games before the bye week, because after the bye week, things are going to get a little stinky when it comes to our schedule. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.